Greetings, citizens of the world. We are Anonymous. Today we are going to talk about the system, explain the government's power to monitor computers. Journalists could be imprisoned for up to 10 years simply for reporting on national security matters. Let's come to terms with the patterns that keep repeating globally. Everyone. What my investigations have led me to believe is that democracy is no longer practiced on the planet. It was practiced previously but was quickly subverted and corrupted. It is a ruse. A clever system of control that gives the people the illusion of freedom. None are more hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe they are free. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. What we live in is a plutocracy, run by an oligarchy, who destroyed democracy. The most powerful people on the planet. Who are the most powerful people on the planet? Well, money is power, so the most absurdly rich people on the planet. The elites. It has been proven that over 99% of the world's wealth is literally in the hands of 1% of the population on the planet. We have been born into an age where an economic model is in place that is inherently designed to do one thing: to forever preserve and enlarge the power of the ruling class of the planet. This is done through the monetary system and achieved through using a debt-based system of control known as central banking. Central banking is the concept of allowing a privately owned corporation to control a country's money supply under the justification that it will control inflation. The last 7 countries without a privately owned central bank that contains the usury principle, asterisk the concept of interest, in 1999 were Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Iran, North Korea, Cuba and Sudan. Notice a pattern with those countries and the last few countries who have been invaded recently. Every country that has been invaded has had a new central bank installed. Now there are only 3 countries left in the world without a privately owned central bank. The premise of a privately owned central bank is that it loans a country money. With interest it calls in this loan regularly. The problem is, a country was only given X amount. If it needs to pay X amount back plus the interest of Y, how on earth can it pay Y? By taking out another loan. This time the sum of X plus Y. The process repeats and locks the country into a debt cycle, one which can never be escaped. The world is $40 trillion in debt. In debt to who, I ask you? It is in debt to a tiny handful of the richest people in the world who are all part of a banking cartel that has existed since the 1600s. The Rothschilds are the most prominent and well-known. The Rockefellers are another. Note now, it is at this point I'd always have someone point out their country is not under control of a private bank. Their banks is the official sounding insert country name central bank. Another point that is made at this stage is the common notion that the structure of central banking has a mechanism that returns profits back into treasury of the nation as money supply after covering the costs of maintaining the central bank itself. What is not discussed on your first Google hit of how central banks work is the hidden notion of covering costs of running the central bank. Hidden in these costs is the fees involved in being part of the IMF and the World Bank. These fees are either subscription fees or interest depending on your role in the IMF to pay for this interest. You often must give them real assets like gold in essence. We are being bled of physical property and assets for using a fiat currency, a currency worth nothing. Central banks around the world are all connected to think tanks run by the wealthiest people on the planet. Furthermore, I have yet to find a central bank that has an external audit process, meaning you cannot see how much it costs to run the bank. The theory involved in their decisions or the people who they connected to globally which are wielding influence over their policy-making decisions. And note what happens when this process begins on a country. Privatization. The country's resources that were once owned by the people progressively get sold off to attempt to pay this debt owed by using this privately controlled monetary system. The consequences of privatization become more and more severe over time. Privatization means it is a privately owned enterprise providing a service under the reasoning it will be a more efficient model. Only a select few profit from providing this service though. The number one rule for a corporation is increased revenue. Continually increased profit. If a company does not continue to generate more profit than the last year, it is considered stagnating and will be replaced and bought out by a company that does. The byproduct of perpetually increasing corporate profits is perpetually increasing prices. Thus the wealth gap in the world is ever increasing. You can see the stages of privatizing over a country in debt as it progressively loses its public assets. Telecommunications is one of the first to go, then transportation. The process continues over every public property until it reaches the loss of the water supply. It is at this stage a country is in serious financial hardship and begins to sell its resources at undervalued rates to corporations. But we don't notice the same people whom we must sell these assets and resources to are the same people who have indebted us in the first place by imposing the economic model we use. We look around seeing it's getting harder and harder to survive. Our wages barely go up if ever, and yet it's getting more and more expensive to live. As seen in the graphs above, the wealth gap is becoming larger and larger, and the richest people in the world are the only people experiencing a progressive gain in quality of life, all whilst everybody else's quality of life is diminishing. We are strung along with this notion that if we work hard enough we can become just like them. Rich, successful, powerful. This is an illusion. A concept to justify the system and to encourage people to participate in it. The only people who come close are those that are pioneers of world-changing technologies, such as Bill Gates. Even Bill Gates is nothing compared to the power of the elites. Bill Gates is a billionaire. The elites are worth trillions. Propaganda in its current state is a relatively new and incredibly powerful tool. It is subversive and ever present in our society. As shown in the study above, all corporations are owned through shared divisions by the same core group of wealthy elites. This includes the corporations that own the media. To influence human beings' thought patterns, all it takes is repetition. You merely surround them with an idea or image or sound repetitively over and over again, and a person assumes they came to this opinion themselves. If I see it everywhere, or if people keep saying it everywhere, it must be true. Never before in the history of humanity has manipulation of the populace been so easy. The saturation of television, internet and mobile devices coupled with the progressive science of psychology has led to a new era of propaganda that is on a massive, far-reaching, intelligent and psychologically manipulative scale that has never been seen before. If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. The lie can be maintained only for such time as the state can shield the people from the political, economic and/or military consequences of the lie. It thus becomes vitally important for the state to use all of its powers to repress dissent. For the truth is the mortal enemy of the lie, and thus by extension, the truth is the greatest enemy of the state. Joseph Goebbels, Nazi propaganda specialist. Propaganda has taken on a new and even more insidious means of operation in this new technological era. It has recently been learned, through whistleblowers, that our governments around the world are currently engaged in social media manipulation on an unprecedented level. There is currently mass infiltration and manipulation of blogs, forums, social media outlets and popular sites which see mass-level internet traffic by government agents. Yes, this means Facebook, Reddit, Tumblr, everything. There is now divisions of government whose sole purpose is to discredit activists and people talking about government crime. Let that sink in. There are now government agencies whose sole purpose is to manipulate social media through mass bot accounts and infiltration through positions of power of moderation. To take a thread and make it appear as if the majority of commentary and opinion in that thread is seen in a negative and derogatory light. To visit a thread or a page and see a heavily favored viewpoint already subconsciously alters your interest in the information presented in the thread or page. Sources here: recently released Snowden leaks reveals how GCHQ/NSA use the internet to manipulate, deceive and destroy reputations of activists. Democracy is a con game. It's a word invented to placate people to make them accept a given institution. All institutions sing, "We are free." The minute you hear freedom and democracy, watch out, because in a truly free nation, no one has to tell you you're free. Jacques Fresco false flag attacks. Historical events in which a governing institution attacks itself in order to force its peoples to turn to the state to ask for assistance from an enemy, in the process giving up civil liberties and making the state more powerful. Also used as a pretext to sway public opinion into accepting their nation using imperialism to further its strength globally. So, corporations are all owned by the wealthy elite. They have manipulated and subverted free societies into accepting economic models which are designed to enslave that nation into debt so that all resources and systems are under their control, even the system of how the nation is governed. Lobbyists spend billions persuading our representatives to legislate the corporations' ever-increasing freedoms, all whilst our own personal liberties are being eroded. These institutions were here before you were born. That's why we think this is normal. It's just business. It's just the way the world works. This is not normal. This is not freedom. This is modern free-range slavery delivered in such a subversive way that we cannot see our own prison. Yet we all know something is wrong. You just look around and you see it everywhere. Poverty, starvation, all whilst current agricultural means are producing over 100% of the world's food supply needs. War, endless war. In the entire time I have been alive I cannot remember a time where war was not being waged. War is a racket. It always has been. It is possibly the oldest, easily the most profitable, surely the most vicious. It is the only one international in scope. It is the only one in which the profits are reckoned in dollars and the losses in lives. A racket is best described, I believe, as something that is not what it seems to the majority of the people. Only a small inside group knows what it is about. It is conducted for the benefit of the very few, at the expense of the very many. Out of war a few people make huge fortunes. In the World War I, a mere handful garnered the profits of the conflict. At least 21,000 new millionaires and billionaires were made in the United States during the World War that many admitted their huge blood gains in their income tax returns. How many other war millionaires falsified their tax returns no one knows. A speech delivered in 1933 by Major General Smedley Butler, USMC. War is a commodity. War is profit. War is a mechanism used to destroy a host nation's leader when they are not willing to bend to the will on the wealthy elites in their desire for resources or accepting the current economic model of control using a central bank. Every player in a war is funded by these wealthy elites. As waging war is expensive and creates more debt to that country, destroying property means it requires to be rebuilt, which further funnels money into the corporations. It is pure profit in the hands of the people that own all the companies. The loss of millions of lives is irrelevant to the military-industrial complex. Short clip of USA General Wesley Clark talking about the 7 countries America intend to invade and in what order. Money is power. Money is control. Without money you starve and are homeless. So you are free to enroll in the labor force or die. Money doesn't mean anything to the people who own it all. They know it means nothing. They trick us into believing it means something, but to them it is just power. The amount of money they have allows them to influence and control every nation on every level of the nation's faculties and operations. If a nation resists control, there is a series of steps taken, ranging in severity till the country bends to their will, from sanctions to assassination. The international banking cabal employs a unique kind of manipulation and brute force, using field operatives known as economic hitmen. The last American president who attempted to expose this was JFK. He was assassinated. He intended to stop using a central bank and allow the country to print its own money once more, debt-free. He also intended to stop the war machine. The concept of a powerful country's leader being assassinated to create a new hierarchy and power structure is known as a coup d'état. A coup d'état, also known as a coup, a putsch, or an overthrow, is the sudden and illegal seizure of a government, usually instigated by a small group of the existing state establishment to depose the established government and replace it with a new ruling body, civil or military. A coup d'état is considered successful when the usurpers establish their dominance. When the coup neither fails completely nor succeeds, A civil war is a likely consequence. A coup d'état typically uses the extant government's power to assume political control of the country. In coup d'état, a practical handbook open square bracket page needed. Military historian Edward Luttwak states that a coup consists of the infiltration of a small, but critical, segment of the state apparatus, which is then used to displace the government from its control of the remainder. The armed forces, whether military or paramilitary, can be a defining factor of a coup d'état. If you think the concept that America has undergone a coup d'état is unlikely, think again. An attempt was already made prior to JFK 30 years ago, against President Roosevelt. The attempted coup d'état was allegedly orchestrated by prominent wealthy businessmen. In 1933, a plot to subvert a free people's government was whistle-blown by USMC General Smedley Butler, and that is the only reason it did not succeed. 30 years later, though, people who delve down the path of not trusting government institutions do not call themselves conspiracy theorists. This is a word which appeared in the 50s and has been credited to the CIA and their program Operation Mockingbird. What do you think when you hear the word conspiracy theorist? I'll take a guess. You think crazy. This is the power of repetition and programming. You hear those words used in conjunction often enough, it becomes an association. People who have gone down a path of questioning the system, questioning their own reality, and investigating how the current social, economic, political and environmental constructs human beings have put into place actually work do not call themselves this. They call themselves critical thinkers. It is to assess information without believing it and to fact-check things you are told yourself, and to be open-minded to any new information presented to you, even if it is contrary to your beliefs or current understanding of how things work. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned. No rumor is printed. No secret is revealed. JFK. This speech was given 2 years before his assassination, and it was about the spread of communism. I place this quote here because others theorize it was saying something else. It was a foreshadowing about something JFK become aware of once in office. That it was an address to the world about the banking institutions in place and the stranglehold they had over sovereign nations' freedoms. You decide for yourself. Here's a quote from one of the wealthiest people on the planet, who is part of the central banking group of the world and one of the major players of the Bilderberg Group for more than a century. Ideological extremists at either end of the political spectrum have seized upon well-publicized incidents such as my encounter with Castro to attack the Rockefeller family for the inordinate influence they claim we wield over American political and economic institutions. Some even believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists, and of conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure. One world, if you will. If that's the charge, I stand guilty, and I am proud of it. David Rockefeller, 1st of October, 2014. We are anonymous. We are legion, united as one, divided by none. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us.